Welcome to the Nerd Party.
When shall we two meet again, in thunder, lightning, or in rain? When the hurly-burly's done? When the podcast's lost and won? That will be I, the set of sun, where the place, inside the pod booth, there to talk the tragedy of Macbeth. Macbeth. Hello, and welcome to the A24 Project. And if you haven't guessed already, the point of discussion for today's episode is Joel Coen's The Tragedy of Macbeth, not to be mistaken with the comedy of Macbeth, just in case you happen to have seen a very strange version of it off-Broadway, perhaps. I'm Dallas King, and with me as always is Lee Hutchison. How are you?
Yeah, really good. I think representation matters, and two Scottish guys talking about the Scottish play. I think, there's a few A24 podcasts out there, articles and reviews, but how many of them will give you the authentic Scottish accent and opinion? Only us.
Exactly. Something wicked indeed this way comes. But before that, well, actually something wicked this way comes right now, because we are about to dive into just a wee taste of Euphoria Episode 2. Euphoria launched last week, and well, actually not last week because you're probably listening to this at another time. It launched this month, and instead of doing a big episode at the end, it's just too exciting to talk about. So, we're still waiting on Florence Pugh to accept our invitation to come on for a full season recap, but we're going to talk through each episode as it comes up. So, episode 2. Yes, there were more shots of erect penises. What do you expect with Euphoria, Lee? Did it live up to your expectations?
Yeah, the first episode was pretty decent, but this one, it really kind of clicked into gear for the season. I do feel I kind of said it with the first episode, I feel like we're not getting as much Rue and Jules as kind of I expected. It seems like they're kind of dancing around that kind of plot. It hasn't felt like it's been the key driver of the season so far, but they've got such a great supporting cast, and a lot of them have had kind of their spotlight or a specific episode in the first season. But I like how the show almost feels like a bit more of an ensemble piece. There's kind of multiple storylines going on at the same time, characters getting a lot of equal kind of representation, and I think there's some interesting storylines that are certainly starting to bubble away. And yeah, it's been another great week. It seems to be that no matter, even if he's punched Nate almost to death, Fez seems to be enjoying quite the love-in online and social medias and memes, etc. So
everyone loves a bad boy.
Yeah, so I've been enjoying him, and the little moments between him and Lexi, for example, were great. And yeah, it's kind of coming along really well. And as someone that really enjoyed the movie Personal Shopper, when Alexa Demi is sort of like getting dressed into these fancy clothes and getting a feel of them in the mirror, I was like, I'm pretty sure I've seen this one done before. So yeah, I'm enjoying it. It's kind of coming together what it feels like it's for the season. But yeah, I don't know really where it'll maybe go next episode, but it feels like there's gotta be something done to Rue and Jules anyway.
Well, if you're looking for another Personal Shopper motif, I think you should probably wait until Emily in Paris Season 3, because apparently there's a chance that she might be going to London, which means, she's going to have to take the Eurostar, and she can never stay off her phone, so you never know what might happen there. But with this one, well, yeah, I think when we discussed Euphoria Season 1, I think one of my wishes for the season 2 was that it was potentially going to be more of an ensemble piece, maybe because season 1 had the structure of basically it was Rue and Jules' story, and you had all these other subplots, so like you say, bubbling away in the background. I was hopefully looking forward to each episode maybe focusing on a different character, and it seems maybe they're not doing that specifically, but they have clearly recognized the huge pool of talent that they've got with these actors and actresses, so they're basically everyone's getting more time to shine in the spotlight. And yeah, there's lots going on. Interesting to see them bringing Cal back, Nate's dad, so that plot is not going away anytime soon as well. So it's nice to see that they haven't just sort of ditched everything at the end of season 1, rebooted and started again. Everything is still there. Still lots of cool needle drops, still lots of exciting cinematography and stuff like that. a lot of people I've seen on Twitter and social media basically saying, Euphoria, this isn't for me. I don't understand who it's for. I think there's a Euphoria out of context thing with people sort of saying that, oh, my heart, there you are, and stuff like that. And yeah, it's getting knocked by people who, similarly to I think it's Brass Eye, basically, and stuff like that. Basically, people who haven't watched it are slagging it off, but anyone who has watched it will either be shocked and appalled or absolutely delighted. So yeah, we're excited to see where it goes. But yes, the erect penis counter will probably be hitting double digits by the end of the series, I expect.
Yeah, it's certainly starting to tick up.
Extreme close-ups of bodily parts to extreme eyebrows. It is the tragedy of Macbeth. I mean, if anyone is unaware of the story of Macbeth, I mean, how could you not be? This is the story of a Scottish lord who becomes convinced by a trio of witches that he will become the next king of Scotland, and his ambitious wife supports him in his plans for seizing power. Adapted from the original stage play by William Shakespeare, whatever happened to him. This is directed by Joel Cohen, written for the screen by Joel Cohen on his own. This is the first Coen brothers film, really, that does not feature Ethan. He's branched out on his own. It stars Denzel Washington as the Thane of Cawdor, and Frances McDormand, Joel Cohen's wife, and a very successful actress, winning multiple Oscars for her parts as Lady Macbeth. Lee, I guess first things first, how familiar are you with the tragedy of Macbeth, and how many different incarnations have you maybe seen either on stage or on screen?
Quite a few, really, when you start to think about it. I mean, I'm familiar with Macbeth. I understand the plot, the synopsis. I think a problem I always have with Shakespeare is maybe I'm not a thespian or trained in that line of work. I think being from...
What, you don't have a PhD in iambic pentameter, no?
Maybe based on where we've grown up in Scotland, I was more used to sort of Doric than Shakespeare. And I often find when I've watched nearly every adaptation of Macbeth, even if I know the plot, I always feel like I'm 2 steps behind as the plot is moving on. Like I'm just like, I make sense of that line, or I get that. And then it's kind of moved on, and I'm just sort of always playing a bit catch up. But I've really enjoyed some versions of it over the years. I thought the Michael Fassbender one was, almost in, the opposite to this one. It was just stunning in terms of its use of color, and its cinematography was equally as impressive yet different. I was lucky enough the week I saw the Tragedy of Macbeth in the cinema, I saw the stage play with Saoirse Ronan as Lady Macbeth, and so that felt so surreal. You kind of wait for one Macbeth adaptation and then 2 come along in the same week, so both very different. And I love being able to go to the theatre and the stage and to watch that was fantastic. So yeah, there was a bit of pressure on the film that week, but yeah, very familiar with it, the tropes. And I think I described it the other day to someone that if you're someone that especially likes Star Trek, it's impossible not to watch something like Macbeth and feel like the Leonardo DiCaprio point, where it's like, it's an episode title that they've used, or that's an actor from that show. It's one of those ones, like, it, no matter what you think of Shakespeare, it's impossible not to almost consider him the modern day sort of Bible in a way, in terms of how media and literature and so many people have mined from it, drawn from it, been inspired by it, been trained by it. So you've just always got that massive respect for the original text, regardless of your personal take on it.
Yeah, I mean, was there a specific Shakespearean text that you were forced to do at school? I'm not going to say that you were glad to do, because basically by the time of reading it multiple times and whatever, I mean, for me, I think at standard grade, I think we did Much Ado About Nothing, but we're lucky enough to have the Kenneth Branagh version, which also starred Denzel Washington, actually. So we were able to watch that a few times. They wheeled out the TV on the trolley, and we got to watch that. But I mean, was there a particular text that you had to study?
Do you know what? I think we also watched the Much Ado About video in like secondary 3. I completely forgot about that. Yeah, we did do that, but the text that we really dived into the most was Romeo and Juliet, and it's still one of the most traumatic memories I've ever had. I think we spent maybe about a month of this class, every maybe couple of days, we would all kind of take turns in the class to sort of read Shakespeare aloud. And it doesn't necessarily flow off the tongue very well of a lot of people. Not everyone can be Denzel Washington. And there's a bunch of sort of rural Scotland kids trying to quote Shakespeare, and it just comes across very stilted, can kind of people tripping over their words. I remember just thinking it was the longest month just going through Romeo and Juliet, and I just wished, could we not just watch the Baz Luhrmann version? It's maybe it started some people in my classes Shakespeare love, and they've taken it to the stage, but for me it almost killed it straight dead. What about for yourself?
Yeah, well, it was much ado, and I think at one point, we did do Romeo and Juliet as well, to the point where, I think we were studying it when the Baz Luhrmann version came out, and so I think we must have been in like fourth or fifth year or something. So we were allowed one day to take time out of our work day at school to go and see the Baz Luhrmann version at the thing, but the projector broke. But of course, we didn't tell our teacher, so we actually then subbed in and went to a screening of Empire Strikes Back, which had been released on special edition at the time. So that's my school confession. Not I shouldn't have done it, but you'd gone all that way to the cinema. It'd be a shame just to waste it. But those were the two we did. And in terms of Macbeth, seen several versions. I think I've seen a sort of I think it was maybe the National Scottish Ballet version, HMT. I've seen, obviously, the Michael Fassbender one was the most recent version on the screen. I was very lucky to see James McAvoy in Macbeth in the Trafalgar Studios in London. And it wasn't until I dug out when I was moving house and I had all the brochures and programs from shows that I'd seen. That one I got signed by him, but then I also saw it was signed by Lady Macbeth as well, some actress back then called Claire Foy. Didn't know who she was. Oh no, wait, that's Claire Foy that was in The Crown. Of course it was. So I saw her before she got The Crown. So
Well, I've also done a similar. I saw oh my god, it's completely escaped my mind. I saw Benedict Cumberbatch on stage do Shakespeare, but oh my god, I can't even remember the name of the play now.
Was it the Hamlet one at the National Theatre?
Yes, that was the one. Yeah, I saw him do Hamlet, which was pretty impressive. And I've seen like Patrick Stewart do like some Shakespeare readings, which was pretty awesome for myself. So definitely, it's hard not to. It's almost interesting. I think I talked about it. We've got an interview coming up, down the line with Ernest Peebles from Zola, who does a lot of like Shakespeare acting, and it's so fascinating. The Americans in particular, and actors just always seem to gravitate towards
Shakespeare.
That it, and I'm a sucker for it. Putting a big name actor that I like. Yeah, I'll go see the Tragedy of Macbeth for the 88th time, or Hamlet. Yeah, Hamlet with Benedict Cumberbatch. Count me in. So there's definitely that weird interest that the Americans really have with Shakespeare.
Yeah, no, I mean, because when we did Val the other week, and that he talks about having trained at Juilliard and stuff like that, and he had the dream that all actors seem to have, which is to play Hamlet. That's the one role that everyone wants, and he wanted to do it by 27, which I guess matches up with the play. But the Benedict Cumberbatch, I saw that doing NT Live, so I was screening that in the projection room, and that was one which I was aware of, but maybe I hadn't ever sat down and watched like the 4-hour Kenneth Branagh version, and then it's just how many quotes and stuff you go, oh yes, like you say, oh that's where that came from, but I just have to shout out to, if anyone in the States is listening to this and you haven't seen Upstart Crow, starring David Mitchell and by Ben Elton, a very, very funny British comedy series looking at Shakespeare and during the period of his life when he's writing all these plays, and just the sort of foreshadowing and all the funny jokes as well. I just think it's one of the best sort of comedy shows I've seen in the last couple of years. So that's a random shout out for that one. But back to Macbeth. But before that, Lee, I mean, in terms of your cinematic adaptations of Shakespeare, basically we have sort of three versions. We have the classic, bog standard, this is Macbeth, as it was written. You've got the modern day takes, something like West Side Story, which transfers Romeo and Juliet into New York in the 50s into a musical. You've got 10 Things I Hate About You, which is an update of Taming of the Shrew put into high school. And then you've got the hybrid model, which I guess hybrid models are all the rage these days. Hybrid model, which is something like maybe we shouldn't talk about it, but I'm going to mention it anyway. A certain director's version of Much Ado About Nothing, which takes the original dialogue and just basically puts it into a modern day setting. What is your preferred outlet for your consumption of Shakespeare on the big screen?
It's hard to say. I do like sort of. I think if you're going to do the text, I think there is a world for your West Side Stories, that interpretation. But, I almost like, probably what they've almost done with this movie of like, make it whatever type that you want to do, sort of like keep the text is almost sort of sacred to an extent. But what world can you build for it? Is it something set in the modern world? I think something like the Romeo and Juliet movie, for a 90s kid still stands the test of time. But then something like this where it's like, you look at that and you think that is such a pure vision of what a filmmaker wanted. And, I think it all just depends on who's involved. And yeah, I like some of the interpretations. They're fun, and, you kick yourself sometimes afterwards when you realize what it's been based on. But, I think there's scope for them all and so on. So yeah, I know obviously it's public sort of text, Shakespeare. So that gives you a lot of hope for, is it sort of, not Paddington Bear, Winnie the Pooh or something like that. Is he now sort of in public world? So we could maybe be getting very different interpretations of Winnie the Pooh in a similar vein. Who knows?
I believe he is now, as of a couple of days ago, actually. I think, yeah, he passed. He's over 100 now, so the copyright is transferred into the public domain. So we'll have to see what happens to that. But yeah, it's when you realize something is an adaptation when you didn't realize originally. Although some people still don't really get it. I think there was a tweet the other day about somebody who'd watched Belle and said they were getting major Beauty and the Beast vibes when it is a Japanese anime adaptation, although set in a digital world. It's like, yeah, it's even called Belle. It's like, yeah, oh well, never mind. But with this one, if someone was to ask me what my favorite Shakespeare movies were, yeah, I probably will go with the likes of 10 Things I Hate About You, etc. But that's one that I just grew up with. So yeah, I think I would go. I do love a modern take, but there's a lot to appreciate in this version, and we're going to sort of dive straight in. At the beginning, you get this wonderful sort of sequence with the three witches, all played by Catherine Hunter as well. But I think pretty much one of the first, the first face on screen, one of our favorites, A24's second most frequent actor. It's Finchy, Ralph Ineson. What did you make of that start of the film?
Yeah, it was one of those ones. I think there's.
Did you know that he was in that one?
No, the only people I knew that were in it were Harry Melling, who we had on our sort of previous podcast, and I knew about obviously Denzel Washington and Frances McDormand, but I didn't know anyone else. And it was such a fantastic kind of cast, wasn't it? And I think when Ralph Ineson appears at the beginning, you're like, oh, who else might appear in this? Small roles, big roles. I think the casting of this film is probably one of its strongest aspects. So yeah, when he came along and you thought, oh, he's continued to take up his A24 appearances, I thought that was fantastic. So yeah, it's just, yeah, I'm sure we'll dive into the cast, but another great choice to kick off.
Yeah, and I guess since it is such a faithful adaptation of the text, the main sort of talking points are, like you say, how do you distinguish your version from anyone else's? And that's with the decision to go with black and white cinematography, and then also quite sort of stunning production design, sets and costumes where essentially it looks like a sort of German expressionist film. Somebody watching this and getting a lot of Seventh Seal vibes from this one. So what did you make of the decision to film in black and white and go with this sort of expressionist look to the film?
I think I said it when I first saw the film, and I say it in the best possible way. It reminded me of a really cheap quote unquote cheap 1960s Doctor Who style episode with maybe just a little bit more of a budget behind it. I like that almost kind of letterboxed format. The all shot on a sound stage. I think apart from maybe one scene, I think it was, everything else was shot on stage, and it reminded you of those sorts of old school, almost the thing probably the generation before ours would have watched when they had the TVs rolled into their classrooms, if they had that, I guess. They would watch maybe some old school Shakespeare or something like that with some maybe hackneyed actor that maybe used to appear in EastEnders or something like that. And I like that. It really threw me into a different era, and just the use of shapes and minimalistic kind of set design I just found impressive. And I really liked it when I rewatched it the other day. Apple TV have a thing where sometimes you get like special features you can watch, similar to I think Disney Plus have it. And I watched it, and they had like a little behind the scenes, like 13-minute puff thing, and they talked about how they even painted on some of the shadows in black and white onto the screen, and it's just that attention to detail was really impressive. And I just thought it looked stunning in black and white. And again, it's one of those movies where I like it, I want to like it more, but I just respect that vision that's clearly on display here, and the technique and skills used in, how the outfits look, the sets and scenery, the composition. I thought the black and white was incredibly effective, and it took me to a different time, really, of watching a film like this. What about for yourself? Did you enjoy black and white?
Yeah, no, I loved it. Like you say, you do need to do something to stand out these days, and it's a very bold decision given how bloody a story it is to film that all in black and white. And some arty directors would have maybe been tempted to keep the red of the blood in, but it's just pure black and white. And I mean, it's a stunning, beautiful film to watch, and the cinematographer is Bruno Delbonnel, who has done a few other Coen Brothers movies, but probably most sort of famous for the cinematography on the sort of Jean-Paul Jeunet films like Amélie and Very Long Engagement. So always, brings his A game. So, and like you say, the production design. Yeah, I do know what you're saying about the sort of 1960s BBC sort of feel, like on a sort of minimalistic soundstage where the sets are impressive, but you do know that if you maybe gave them if you leaned on them ever so slightly too hard, the whole thing might come collapsing down. But and certainly with the costumes as well, it did feel sort of like that. And it does add a bit of like a slight sort of authenticity to the thing, that like these are actors, thespians, sort of dressing up and doing their best sort of Shakespearean thing. I mean, some fantastic performances in here. I mean, obviously, when you've got people like Denzel and Frances McDormand, I mean, obviously, they're going to bring their A game. It's a thing. But in terms of standouts for you, was there any particular? I think there was one for me. It was Alex Hassell as the sort of Ross, this sort of priest who. That role seemed to have changed, I think, from any sort of stage version that I've seen. He seemed almost sort of omnipresent, and like he was almost sort of behind the scenes, helping to sort of move things along, like the witches and stuff like that. He always seemed to be in and about, sort of meddling with people, almost like a sort of in the thick of it politician style thing. He just had his lots of fingers and lots of pies and stuff like that. I mean, were there any sort of standouts beyond the Macbeths?
Yeah, I think for me, I love the witches. I think all played by Catherine Hunter, and I think I don't see it happening, but there's been a lot of awards buzz about her sort of as these witches, the weird sisters. I thought they were really good, and kind of Corey Hawkins as Macduff, and I think it tied into something I really enjoyed about sort of the Green Knight too, where it's like this. I mentioned it. This cast is really fantastic, and it's the colorblind nature of the the film as well, where you have all these characters where it's just we'll give it to the best actor, and that's something I want to see more of. I don't think it's ever mentioned, or kind of they try and make a big deal of it, in any sort of the promotional materials, etc. But what a brilliant kind of cast. But for me, one of the ones I loved was the murderer, and that was, I think it was played by Brian Thompson.
Ah, yes, X-Files Alien Bounty Hunter. I thought you were going to spot that one.
I really like that one. He also played Klingon multiple times in Star Trek as well, so immediately stood out. So yeah, it was just things like that where you have these characters, and it's picked by some of the best people. I think Harry Melling as well. Like I'm not familiar with him from Harry Potter, but he doesn't look out of place in sort of this Coen brother world. He has this such a interesting kind of looking face as well, and I don't think she was the best Lady Macbeth I've ever seen, but Frances McDormand was really interesting. But yeah, it's just really good, and I thought Stephen Root great as well as
Yes.
the porter as well. I think he maybe had one or two little roles in that, but he brings that sort of comic relief that is not really there within the film, which is at times quite, I suppose, like the film itself, a bit grey and dour.
Yeah, that's the scene that I always forget about. I always forget about the Porter scene where he's talking about how the alcohol, it fuels the desire but impedes the performance. So yeah, no, it was great to see him sort of pop up. I know what you're saying about McDormand and Lady Macbeth. I mean, I don't want to be ageist here, but certain elements of her storyline with it's clear that she's they've lost a child and whatever, but it seems like it's maybe been too far away. I can understand maybe more of the sort of the power struggle where it's been longer for them. You can understand it when it's a young couple who are hungry, ambitious, and want to drive up, but maybe with them being older, there is this more of a dynamic of, they've been passed over potentially from time to time. So they've got to seize power now. Otherwise, they'll never have it. But the sort of, the get out damn spot and stuff like that didn't really hit maybe as hard as perhaps someone like the Marion Cotillard performance in the Fassbender one as well. But I mean, Denzel, I thought was, he's physical, he's powerful, he's just got the gravitas to pull off this sort of thing. But one of the fun things I've always sort of found out about is that scene where after the murders, where it's like, she says, "Is it done?" and whatever. He's like, "Yeah, it's done. Look, I've got the daggers here." And she's like, "What the hell did you bring these back here for? You meant to have left them by the thing. They've got your fingerprints of all of them." It's like, oh, and then it's a woman who's like, "Oh, I've got to clean up after your mess. This is not fair," and whatever. So I'm glad that sort of bit sort of stayed in. But
And do you know what that bit made me really think of? Like, I think you can watch a film like this and go, okay, yeah, it's just Joel, not Ethan, but it still felt like a Coen Brothers movie in that moment, kind of the hubris of someone that kind of gets involved in a crime and how it spirals from there, and how many times have sort of their characters from Lady Killers to Fargo have like their stupidity caught them out and so on. I just thought at that moment I was like, I could imagine that as sort of like a Jerry style character from Fargo. If people are asking why would a Coen brother do a Macbeth, a moment like that goes, that's a Macbeth, that's the Coens, they're hand in hand together.
yeah, and because they can as well. So I mean, what did you make of sort of the finale of this one, with the fields of Dunsinane marching on Cawdor, and the final battle between Macduff and Macbeth, because it's all leading up to this moment of anger and revenge and stuff like that, and also the futility of it, because Macbeth has been led so much by these visions of what he's been told by the witches, to the point where he's had his best friend murdered to try and consolidate his power. But when it's revealed that Macduff is not by woman born, which essentially means, I guess, a C-section in the old parlance of our times, he perhaps knows his time is up. I mean, what did you make of that battle? Because it is played out on a very narrow sort of bridge, which is something, you would have been tempted maybe to do like the big sweeping battle, with horses and stuff like that. But it's really, as with everything in this adaptation, it's very sort of minimalist, scaled back.
Yeah, that German expressionism kind of continues on in that scene. And yeah, it's one of those things. I think, see, when I was like younger, I think of something like Star Wars, for example, where as a kid I thought that there was nothing better than the Phantom Menace, like Duel of the Fates style thing of like, it's action, it's non-stop. But like as you get older, there's just something about that intensity of a small location, and you go back and you go, whether it's this, an Empire Strikes Back, which is slightly different, but that sort of intensity of like two people just really going at it for a short period of time, and it keeps that energy up. It builds out that tension, and it's almost like a belt. It just immediately kind of pulls back. Like, that feels realistic, and it keeps your interest, because there's only so long you can watch someone sword fighting for. I mean, you think of that was episode 3, where it's like that 45-minute long one in lava. Less is sometimes a lot more with things like that, and I enjoyed watching it. Sort of, again, you're watching on a soundstage. It leans into sort of that kind of cheaper, minimalistic kind of look for something like that, but it was no less interesting, and it was a short but sweet kind of climax.
Yeah, because realistically, if you're wearing all that armor and these swords, which probably weigh a quarter of your body weight as well, these massive broadswords, it is going to take it out of you. And that was one of the things I liked about the fight, is that you could see that it was having an effect on. You could see they were getting tired and stuff, and that's when mistakes start to drop in and stuff like that. And then, of course, we get the ending. Do you think Denzel has kept any props from the from the film? Perhaps, his own head to put on a mantelpiece.
Yeah, I wonder if he'll get like, I know the A24 shop did like a head puzzle piece of the head from Hereditary, so maybe he's going to be in line for something like that. You kind of always assume people steal a sword or some sort of armor or something like that. But if I had a thing where I had a cast of my head made and it was chopped off, I would want to take that and put it in sort of like some sort of glass thing at home. I think that would be something I would definitely steal. So I'm sure Denzel Washington is far too classy for something like that.
Yeah, I'm sure I asked that because I'm sure that James McAvoy kept the head from the stage production of that one, and that's actually one which I've always meant to watch. Apparently, there's a version of Macbeth with James McAvoy as Macbeth, but set in a kitchen. So given that I've seen Boiling Point and enjoyed that, I think I'd like to see that one as well. I think it was a BBC production, so yeah, I'll need to try and find a copy of that. I think that would be quite a good one to watch. But I mean, in terms of you can never rule the Coen brothers out at Oscar time. Like you say, it hasn't really sort of connected on the awards front so far in terms of there's been a few sort of critics awards and stuff like that, but it's mainly sort of flown under the radar. It has been longlisted for the BAFTAs and stuff like that. I mean, I can also, because of the sort of Shakespearean links, I could see it maybe doing perhaps slightly better at the BAFTAs than the Oscars. But I mean, what do you make of its award chances? Because it's difficult to know what A24 are actually pushing it at this point in time, even though there's only a couple of months until Oscar.
It's just not really happening for them this cycle, is it? I think probably before things kicked off, I thought, I think some of the criticism sometimes of A24 is they don't have the financial might to really push a film, perhaps in a certain direction. The awards, like some of the others, they kind of tend to keep their powder dry. And I thought, well, maybe this being a collaboration with Apple TV, Apple are certainly not short of money and could push something like this. And it gives them sort of that prestige drama that they can, put Oscar winner, get it now on Apple TV, etc., which everyone loves to do. I mean, Netflix have certainly made kind of a personality trait of that in the past few years. But it's just not really happening. And what surprised me was, and it didn't come up until we had our guest on for the streaming episode, where we kind of looked at the deals, where this film was actually locked out of the Independent Spirit Awards or along those lines because it cost more than 20 million. And I think there's been a budget of 35 million apparently has been spoken about for this film, but nothing official. So that would have maybe stood a chance. I mean, I don't know, can you, I forget the Oscar history, but can you get like a best adaptation of a Shakespeare novel into adapted screenplay? And maybe Catherine Hunter might be an outside source for supporting actress, but I don't think it's happening for A24 or this film with the big awards.
I think if that's true about the budget, then I think if Joel and his wife and Denzel had taken slight pay cuts, they probably could have tweaked that just under the line, because I think everything else probably cost about 20 million. But yeah, I think in terms of Oscars, I think Denzel, you can never count out best actor at the moment. I'd say you're looking at 3 definites of Will Smith, Benedict Cumberbatch, and Andrew Garfield. So I think there's 2 spots open to play for. So I mean, they do love Denzel, so I could see him getting a nomination, but I don't think he'd win. I think it will get nominations potentially for cinematography, production design. The adapted screenplay, it's a tough one because it is such a faithful adaptation. It's almost like you've basically cut and pasted it out of the original. How adapted is it? I would say they would struggle to justify that on the final shortlist for that one. Catherine Hunter, again, I think there's too many good supporting actress performances and stuff. If someone like Anne Dowd is struggling to get nominated in the final five for Maths, then I think Catherine Hunter is probably gonna miss out as well. But I'd say cinematography, production design, and Denzel are the top three chances for it to get something. But I think it will depend. I mean, Apple, they've got a lot of money. They could easily be doing a big push for it rather than A24, if they want something like that as well. But coming up over the next few weeks, we've got a few more potential contenders for awards and stuff like that. We're going to have the Souvenir Part 2 will be our next episode in February, and then after that, around about March time, or maybe slightly earlier, if we get the Glasgow Film Festival, we're going to be looking at Sean Baker's Red Rocket, which is indeed nominated for an Independent Spirit Award for Simon Rex's performance. Now, this was your top film when we did our filibuster top 10 of the year. Are you excited to talk about this one?
I'm so excited. I've been sitting on it for so long. So yeah, definitely excited to talk about it with you. I saw today that his Screen Actors Guild nomination got removed due to some sort of technicality or something like that. So that was really disappointing. But he seems to have taken it in good nature. So that was disappointing because if a performance like that, very similar to Adam Sandler in Uncut Gems, it's one that deserves nominations and attention, but sadly won't get it.
Yeah, no, I think it'd be exciting to follow his journey over the next couple of months, and we'll be there all the way with the A24 project. So we'll be back in a couple of weeks, but we've also got a few good interviews and stuff coming along to keep you ticking over. So yeah, we'll see you soon. Bye bye.